Well, good day to you. It is February the 4th. Hope you're having a great day wherever you are. My name is Gary Willing, and I want to welcome you to Search for Signs. And I also want to point out, if you're new, and remind you again, if you've heard these videos before, that if you want to know more about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom, look into it and investigate it for yourself. Also, if you want to see if there's any truth to that, this is the best way to do it too, is to read more about it. You can do it however you want to do it. I do recommend checking out some of the websites that I provided links for in the description portion of these videos. And I do recommend starting with the Share International site first, but it's up to you, whatever you want to do. And if you do that, then you'll kind of see if there's anything to this for yourself and what to do with it. But, like I said, they're all there. All those websites are there for you, and they're free, and, look into it for yourself or not. You want to come back and join the discussion, post your comments, let me know what you think. You can post questions in the comment section, or you can email me at searchforsigns@mail.com. And I also want to thank everybody who has commented or asked a question since the last time I put a video up. I really do appreciate it. All right, now, over the years that I've been doing these videos, I always wanted to personalize my answer to the person who asked it. And unfortunately, sometime last year, in my YouTube studio app, I don't see the person's name anymore. I only see the channel name. So this person probably didn't set up a channel name yet, so it was an auto-generated channel name by YouTube. So it's rather random, but it's a user/PM8YQ3Go9Z. So if you know who that is, if this is you, I'm going to attempt to answer your questions. But also, if I could also make a suggestion, is rather than asking the same question different ways, perhaps you could just stream it down to a few questions, and then I can answer it a little bit better that way. But I'm going to start with the first one you said, and I talk about this all the time, and it's worth repeating, but your question is Maitreya the Antichrist? No, he is not. That's the simplest answer that I can give you. Now, a lot of people are looking for the Antichrist. I get it. A lot of people are devoting a lot of their free time to trying to reveal the Antichrist to the world. I guess it's their own hubris. They want to be the one that's known throughout history as the one who spotted the Antichrist when other people couldn't spot him, I guess. I don't know. Of course, they come to this channel, or they go to Share International or whatever, and they see Maitreya. They perhaps read a few lines where Benjamin Creme uses the term Christ. They don't look into it any more than that. And then they are utterly convinced, and you can't tell them otherwise, that Maitreya is this false prophet, or he's the Antichrist. Now, I'm going to talk about what the Antichrist is, but if you look at it too, there are people who think all sorts of people are the Antichrist. So what is the real answer? I just stumbled across a channel. I found it quite entertaining and informative to some degree, but this guy's utterly convinced that Donald Trump is the Antichrist. Has given all these biblical verses to point out that he is the Antichrist. But I would tell you that there is a large population of evangelical Christians that believe the exact opposite. So what is the real answer? Well, I'm just going to throw this out there to you. You can think of it, you can believe it or not. But the Antichrist that John was talking about in Revelation was not a person. In fact, in your comment or in your question, you capitalized Antichrist. If you look in the Bible, it's not capitalized anywhere in the Bible. It's all lowercase. I guess unless it's at the beginning of a sentence maybe. But the Antichrist is an energy from the Ageless Wisdom point of view. This is what the way it's explained in the Ageless Wisdom Teachings. And it's a energy that's sent out on purpose. It's perhaps not the nicest energy out there. It's not warm and fuzzy, but it does have a purpose of why it's being released in the way that it's being released. It destroys things. It's a destroying energy, but it destroys the old ways of thinking and relating. The first time it was released throughout history was during the time of Nero, who was actually one of the beasts written in the Bible that John was referring to. I guess the reason why it was sent out through him is to destroy the old ways of thinking and relating, which at that time was the Roman dispensation, to allow a new way of thinking and relating to occur, which is what's happened over the last 2,000 years, which allowed Christianity, among other things, to flourish. it would not have been able to do, Christianity would not have been, it would not have flourished in the way that it did had it not been for the work of that energy. Now, fast forward to just about 100 years ago, when World War I started up and then World War II kind of finished that whole deal. But the Antichrist energy was sent out through the Axis powers during that time as well to destroy the old ways of thinking and relating, just as it did 2,000 years prior, to allow a new way of thinking and relating to occur. So over the last 2,000 years, the energies that really have saturated human consciousness to where really everybody is like this for the most part, very individualistic, very idealistic about their own individuality, put themselves pretty much above everybody else. We think ourselves as totally separate from one another. See, this way of thinking that's pretty natural and normal throughout the world today did not exist 2,000 years ago. People did not have those type of thoughts. They didn't relate to the world in that way. If somebody that was a king or a queen or a priest or a Pharisee or whatever told them to think a certain way, they thought that way. They didn't have these thoughts like be the best, or what's another one? I think therefore I am, to use the philosophical term. They didn't have those type of thoughts. They didn't see themselves really as individuals in the way that we see ourselves as individuals today. Now, if we keep going in this way, it's going to get really, really bad, because everyone's trying to be their own emperor and in that way, and we can't. We have to learn to work together, and that's the only way we're going to have a future. So the new way of thinking and relating is far different than what it is today. It's about working together as in groups, and not for groups, and not even with groups, but together as a group. Synthesis, brotherhood, sharing, peace, all the things that we consider to be ideal, which are basically just words for most of us, will eventually become a natural way of life for humanity. But it will only happen because of the release of that energy during the time of World War I and World War II, through the Axis powers of the militarists in Japan, the fascists in Italy, and the Nazis in Germany. Now, it could be said, and somebody could make the argument, that Hitler was the Antichrist. And I really have no other way to say it other than it's an energy. But I think it could be said he was the poster child for the Antichrist, or the face of the franchise, but he was actually not even the Antichrist. It was the energy that was flowing through that group of the Axis powers that was the Antichrist. That did its job, it's done. So everybody who's looking for the Antichrist today, who thinks they found him, really are wasting their time. I'm not saying there aren't evil people out there and people with nefarious intentions that are in the public today, and out there in the world and those kind of things, but it doesn't mean that they're the Antichrist. The Antichrist won't come back for another 3,000 years. So take it for what it is. But I understand why people think Maitreya is the Antichrist. But like I said, I've found other YouTube channels where they talk about other people as the Antichrist. I just came across a channel not too long ago where a guy is convinced that Donald Trump's the Antichrist. But if you're a Donald Trump fan, you're not going to believe that, right? And it's funny, it's always people who view life differently than you is what people would think is the Antichrist. So if you're this person who thinks Donald Trump's the Antichrist, I bet you he's a little bit more left-leaning than perhaps somebody who is very much on the right that thinks Barack Obama is the Antichrist. Do you see what I'm saying? But it's always somebody that you disagree with, whether it's politically or spiritually or religiously or whatever. But that concern really should just be put to rest. I don't think people are going to listen to me on that, but I'm just telling you. But anyway, hopefully that answers that question. All right, so next question you had, does hell exist? No, it does not, in the sense that of what Christians believe. Neither does heaven in that way. Now, there is an afterlife. There's been a lot of people who remember the afterlife who are coming back and talking about it, but that just depends on what your belief is. So I'm not saying that people who you said, do wicked people go to heaven or hell? I'm not saying that at all. Now, by wicked, I guess my question would be back to you: by wicked, do you mean somebody who doesn't believe what you believe, or somebody who is actually out there doing a lot of harm to other people? You even asked the question, what happened when Hitler died? I'm just going by what Ben said, and so take it for what it is. So, I'm not trying to just regurgitate what he said, but I honestly don't know. But he said he went to a very low form of the astral planes, somewhere akin to what the Catholics would call purgatory, and is very much regretting what he did. Now, Hitler was actually evolution on the stage of evolution. He was what's called a second-degree initiate. He was on the same point in evolution as Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Picasso, Einstein, Madame Curie, John F. Kennedy. Very, very advanced from average humanity's point of view. Very powerful and influential in his own way, but also deeply evil. But he wasn't really his strength wasn't coming from him. It was coming from the fact that he was being obsessed by two lords of materiality. And they're just like masters, but they're devoid of love. And they're behind the forces of evil. But they have a function just as the antichrist energy has a function. But where their work becomes evil is where it inhibits and limits evolution. So they're the forces of involution. Evolution is humanity and the masters of wisdom. That's that group. And the forces of involution become evil when they restrict or inhibit the forces of evolution, if that makes any sense. But he was used and obsessed by two masters of darkness, and that's what gave him that strength. And so his karma, according to Ben, is pretty severe, but it wasn't because of the actions of Hitler and the Nazis. It was because he allowed himself to be used by the forces of darkness in that way. It was the forces of darkness that were doing all that work, the genocides and all that stuff. The other thing, too, about Hitler is he won't be able to reincarnate back until after the age of Aquarius. So he's got another 2,000 years of living in the astral planes in this way, living with regret, having to deal with the pain and the suffering of that before he has to work off all the karma that he did in his last lifetime. The other thing, too, to kind of bring it up to a little bit more of recent times, Ben also said the same thing about the Bush administration, that they were being used by this nefarious energy just as Hitler was to some degree, at a lesser degree, but to some degree. And their karma, too, for the most of them, for Bush and Cheney and Wolfowitz and some of the others in his administration, they won't be able, when they pass away, they won't be able to incarnate, too, for another 2,000 years. That energy, that antichrist energy of the Axis powers resurfaced again. One point was in the Zionist movement in Israel. And again, it's not just that they're on that side, they're just creating a disruption and destabilizing the peace in that region. But according to Ben's master, a lot of the Zionists who are in incarnation today were the very middle-level Nazis in their last life. And that's why they're doing to the Palestinians just as the Nazis did to the Jews. And then he said that another point, which is probably the least effective of all those points, is in Eastern Europe, around where Yugoslavia used to be, or the Baltic states, Bosnia, Serbia, Croatia, those kind of things. And then the second strongest is in the Pentagon. And that Pentagon, that nefarious energy in the Pentagon is influencing the U.S. foreign policy, the U.S. domestic policy, and those kind of things, and is really running the country. And he said that every presidential administration since the inception of the Pentagon has been influenced by this energy to some degree. The Republicans are more easily manipulated by it than the Democrats, but it's true to say that the Democrats have also been influenced by the same energy. And if you look at the Republican Party today, they're doing what they started about 30 years ago. It became very apparent what was happening around the time of the Bush-Cheney administration, and it's really happening now with Trump, where they're using people's religion and their faith against them. This is all coming from the forces of darkness. So is it true to say that Trump is the Antichrist? No, but I do think that based on his actions, on the way he is, what's been going around with the people around him and the cult of personality that he's created, I would say with a great deal of confidence that that strength is not coming from him. It's coming from the forces of darkness that are working through him and are influencing not only his actions, but also the actions of those people around him and his followers. And it's quite a extraordinary thing to see. And it's a new phenomenon that's happened. Like I said, it started with the Bush-Cheney administration. People don't talk about that anymore. But it was quite apparent how they got caught up into this religious fervor. And you can see the results of it. They attacked and killed millions of people in the Middle East for no reason. Other than the fact that they wanted the land, they wanted the oil, they wanted the money in that region, and it was a strategic region, relative to what China was doing and all those kind of things. But there were millions of innocent people that were extinguished. It's awful. And they did it all in the name of God and Jesus. And people to this day in this country don't even think about what they did. It was awful. Awful, awful, awful. Hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. And brings to light kind of what's been going on to some degree. Now, you also asked, is Satan real or does Satan exist? I don't think so. I think that, and even if you look in the Bible, Satan is not capitalized either. It's a lowercase. Satan is a symbol for selfishness, I believe, in all of us, that we all have to deal with because we are looking at life separately. Now, Maitreya takes it, he doesn't talk about it in terms of Satan and not Satan, but he talks about it in terms of the illusion of separateness, or seeing life as it really is as one. When you realize the self, you don't have to worry about selfishness or separateness anymore. You don't see it anymore. It doesn't exist because there's no reality to it. It's all an illusion. But what we do based on the illusion that we're separate, our belief that we're separate, is what causes all the harm to everybody around us and eventually back to ourselves. What we sow, so shall we reap. And, all the references to Satan in the Bible, I believe, were just their way of explaining what selfishness really is. I think when you put the blame on the devil and say that the devil made me do it, you kind of absolve yourself of all wrongdoing to some degree, and that we really should look at what we do. And I think that's what Jesus was saying. He never really said that the devil makes you do anything. He just said, what you sow shall you reap. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. That's the way Jesus spoke. Very simple, very truthful, and about the laws of life, about the law of cause and effect. That's what Maitreya and these masters will be teaching humanity. Everything we think, say, and do brings about a cause, for good or for ill. And, I guess my question would be, it doesn't really matter whether you believe in heaven or hell, but does it actually make you a better person by believing those things? And maybe it does for you individually, but for the majority of the people, it doesn't mean anything to them. It doesn't make them a better person. It doesn't make them more harmless, because they feel if they sin, they're going to go to hell, or if they don't sin, they'll get to go to heaven, or whatever, right? And it's far better, I think, to take the teachings of Jesus and apply it personally in that way, where it's, if you look at what you do and what you say and how you think, that's creating the world that you're living in. We don't really look at it like that. In fact, it was such a simple way that he put it that most people don't even talk about it. And all the times I've ever been to a church, they never bring up that verse, ever. But they always talk about other stuff, but they never bring up that. And I think if they just brought up that every single Sunday, and people thought about it and applied it and thought about it and applied it, we'd be living in a far different world than we are living in today. but they get lost in all the dogma, all the rituals, all the, nonsense and BS of trying to interpret the Bible and make sense out of the Bible, when sometimes it just doesn't make sense because it wasn't really written in order to make sense. It was just a bunch of translations and mistranslations and misinterpretations and people putting something in and taking it out, to where there's so many holes in a lot of the storylines and a lot of the parables of the Bible that it really doesn't make sense. But there are some things in there that if you look at it and apply it, can change your life, So hopefully that helps too. But I don't think you have anything to worry about when it comes to Satan or devil or the hell or whatever, or the antichrist. It's just a bunch of fear. Fear for no reason. Even the belief that the world is going to end and the end times is all fear. There's no reality to it. They've been talking about the end times for decades, as far as I know, probably even longer than that. And yet we're still here, It ain't over till it's over, as they say. But hopefully that answers your questions. I'm trying to flip through all these and, see if I answered all of them. But like I said, if you believe Jesus is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords and the one true Savior, that's fine. But be that and also want peace, or want to see the end of war, or want to see the end of hunger. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think there's any contradiction between Catholic belief or Protestant belief or Hindu belief or Jewish belief or Islam or whatever, and thinking that way. And in fact, I'll leave you with this. I think this is probably what Maitreya would say about all those different views on heaven and hell in the Bible. But this has to do with his name, okay? So his personal name is Maitreya. He is looked at and expected for by all the world's religions and those people who do not have a religion. If you're a Christian, you're awaiting the Christ to come back. You think it's Jesus coming back in the clouds, but there's no truth to that. That's never going to happen in that way. Just as the Israeli or the Palestinians at the time of Jesus were expecting the Messiah to come back as a warrior king. That's not how Jesus came back. He came back much humbler and much simpler than that. Much more down to earth and practical than that. But yet, that's how they viewed it, and that's why they missed him in that way. So they're still expecting the Messiah to come back. That's another name for Maitreya. The Hindus are awaiting the Kalki avatar, or Sri Krishna, to come back. The Buddhists are awaiting the fifth Buddha, Maitreya, to come back. The the Muslims are awaiting the Imam Mahdi. But he has been asked already in the Asian community of London, are you the Imam Mahdi? And he goes, well, if I'm the Imam Mahdi, then what about the Christ for the Christians, or the Maitreya for the Buddhists? He said, these are just names. And they only cause confusion within the minds of people. So it's better to look at him as he truly is, which is just a teacher. If you look at him just as a teacher, the Antichrist shouldn't even come into play. He's just here to teach us how to live together, just as Jesus really was just a teacher. Hopefully that helps. I love you guys. Thanks to you very much for the questions and the comments, and I look forward to putting up videos in the very near future. Have a wonderful day. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.